welcome back to 7 Minutes Podcast. This is a special episode because we have actually managed to reach episode 10. Yay! Hello? Some enthusiasm over here?
I'm just waiting for you to introduce yourself.
Oh.
The mystery woman.
Oh. Well, you know,
special guest star.
At this point, I would hope you would know who I am. I am Angela of this podcast.
You are. I'm Zach.
I'm Robert, here for episode X.
like Mega Man X.
In the year 20XX.
Just not quite as cool as Mega Man X.
Yeah, well, no, this is just episode X. So that's like the year 2000X from the original Mega Man series. Mm-hmm. We put another 10 episodes. That could be episode XX.
Oh, okay.
All right, so something to look forward to. But still,
something to aim for.
A landmark episode. We've reached double digits.
Yes, we have.
Quite impressivo.
Yeah. And before we jump in, we should talk about what games we've been playing. Robert, why don't you start?
I think the most recent thing I've been doing is I restarted Ori and the Blind Forest.
Is that the first one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's good so far. For some reason, it's one of those games where every time I start playing it, I enjoy it. It looks really good. It plays really good. Or well, if you want to be grammatical. But I just get to a point where I stop playing, and I'm at that point again. Although I think I'm just stuck this time. I'm in this weird area that's all mostly dark, and I don't know if I just took a wrong turn or what, and getting frustrated. But yeah, playing that. I got oh man, I should just pull up the name because I'm not going to remember. It's that new Retron Game Boy / Game Boy Color / Game Boy Advance clone console that you can plug into your TV. I think it's the Retron SQ, if I'm correct. It's a little tiny cube. So my friends Nick and Christina gave me that for my birthday. And the timing was perfect because I think within just a few days of them giving it to me, Hyperkin put out the patch that they'd been talking about that would make the Game Boy Advance games run better. So when I first plugged it in, Game Boy Advance games did not run well. The frame rate was really bad. So it was incredibly jerky. Like, you could play, but it was way, way too rough for my tastes. But once the update came and I put that onto the system, man, what an enormous difference. The Game Boy Advance games run way better. And, you know, overall, I think it's an incredibly cool little console. It has some oddities that I think need to be fixed. For one thing, you're limited in what USB controllers you can plug into it, which I find kind of odd. It's like, just whatever USB controller, just let it plug in. I don't understand why there's a limitation there.
It might be a little more complicated than that, but like, what does it allow you to plug in?
A lot of Hyperkin controllers. Not a lot. I think it's like 2 or 3 different ones. Right. So, you know, I mean, I get that. You know, it makes sense. I want people to use their hardware or whatever. But given what the device is setting out to do, I think letting someone find the controller that works for them, because it's, you know, it's not an exact science. So anyway, that's one gripe.
And they're following in the footsteps of like the Game Boy player and the Super Game Boy, right?
Yeah.
And so people will come to this new Hyperkin thing having expectations or an ideal of what it means to play a Game Boy game on a home console.
Yeah, you know, I think the fact that they kind of ignored some of the quality of life features you would have expected was not the wisest decision.
Mm-hmm.
You get one color palette that it automatically applies onto old Game Boy games.
Mm-hmm.
Frankly, I would have liked no color palette if you're going to go that route. You know,
just like black and white.
Yeah, I mean, why stick people with just one that they can't change? I also think that it's a little odd, although I get the reasoning. You're not able to save directly onto your cartridge. So if you plug in your copy of whatever, it's going to save it to the console. But then when you go to play the game again on your Game Boy, you won't see the change reflected there. And they said they wanted to avoid any kind of issues with corrupting save files on the cartridge. So I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I think if nothing else, you should have the option to do that if you want.
Yeah, it should be a setting. It's ridiculous. I understand, right? Like, no, it would be a PR nightmare if somebody plugged in their Pokemon cartridge and it ended up corrupting their data.
Yep.
But at the same time, like, if you're playing, I don't know, Link's Awakening or whatever, you want to be able to go back and forth, right?
That's right. And I think that's been kind of a common complaint about it. But I do think it's awesome that you can save directly to the console, because then you're kind of bypassing the issue of, dead batteries in your cartridge. So you don't have to worry about it because it's just saving onto there. And then a last note on it, I think it's a little disappointing that there's this sort of boot up period for every game. So it's like taking the game, dumping it into the console itself, and then playing it through the console. So you're not even really playing on the cartridge either. But, you play with the Game Boy, boom, I turned it on and I'm playing. And the Hyperkin, it's not. You're sitting and waiting. And I had some issues with older cartridges not all working on it either. And I don't know if that was the Hyperkin or the cartridges or what, but I have a pretty big collection of all these games, and they were not all connecting. So.
Yeah. As kind of an interesting gizmo, I think it's cool, like, big picture for third-party companies to be creating new systems that can play these old cartridges, but it sounds like, setting aside maybe cost and difficulty of acquisition, like, what's the advantage of this versus like a Game Boy player for the GameCube?
Well, for one thing, a Game Boy player won't play Game Boy games as far as I remember, so you have that entire library inaccessible. And then the Game Boy player is not going to render in HD. So the Hyperkin does.
Oh, okay.
Now it's only, I forget what it's like, maybe 720, but like it looks great for what it is on the screen. Whereas a Game Boy player, there apparently there's like a rush for Game Boy players right now, and they're becoming expensive. But I'm like, you've got to do quite a bit of work to get it going properly on a TV screen. Like, because, modern flat screens don't have the legacy inputs for the cords you would need. And even if they do, I mean, good luck finding like the composite cables for a GameCube. They're super expensive. They're hard to find.
Yeah.
So all the work you would do just to get that setup going, to me, that makes it problematic, I think, for the average person. I mean, I have like a whole stupid thing going with like a Wii and the composite cables and using the backwards compatibility for the GameCube. So I don't mind, but that's not going to get me with a Game Boy player hooked up. So I do think, though, that with this out and people getting a taste of, hey, I can just throw all my Game Boy games up on the screen, that it's going to make it interesting to see what Analog's pocket device is going to be like. Because it is a portable Game Boy clone that lets you play not just all of Nintendo's handheld games, but also Neo Geo Pocket Color and Game Gear. And they have a dock-like peripheral where you can just take their device, plug it into their dock, and then it goes up on the screen.
Yeah.
So it seems like Analog's might end up being the superior version of this, but at this point that it's not out yet, so we're going to have to wait and see.
All right.
So that was a bit of a long segue, but an interesting one, I think.
Yeah, I'll just stick with emulating. I think that suits me just fine. But have you? I think, were you playing anything else since? I know it's actually been a while since we last recorded.
Yeah. No, I don't really think that there's been a whole heck of a lot. Oh well, God, I'm gonna jumble the name for some reason. Save Me, Mr. Taco.
Yeah,
yeah. The definitive edition of that came out, and LRG sent me a code to play it, and that review is going to go up very soon. That game's really cool. Coincidentally, another Game Boy inspired title, but the developer totally went to town, doing everything that they could to make it feel like a Game Boy game, and it really, really does. It looks good on a TV, but I think if you play that handheld mode on a Switch, it feels more at home because it's portable. Mm-hmm. But either way, really good. It has an entirely new translation, so there's a little bit of controversy with this game, or I don't know if controversy is the right word, but basically Nicalis was the publisher, and Nicalis has had some issues with devs and games getting delisted. So Save Me, Mr. Taco in its original form is no longer in the eShop, and it's likely no one will ever play that version of the game again because
that translation was tied up with Nicalis' publishing of it.
That's right, and there's other things too at play. So he wanted to make the game better, and so he wanted to do a patch, and essentially the patch has just turned into this definitive version of the game. And I thought he did a really good job. I do think it's better than the first. And
If you downloaded the first version, do you still have access to it?
as far as I know, yes, you do have access to it, because I did not have it on my my Switch Lite. And so when I went to go re-download it, it was there still for me.
Oh, okay.
I think it's normally how it works with delisted games, unless there's like unless the game turns out to itself be illegal or something like that.
Yeah.
So what have you been playing, Zach?
Well, I've been playing a lot of Final Fantasy XIV, believe it or not. I'll let Angela take the lead on discussing our exploits since the last time.
Okay.
But I've also, I do this every 6 months or so. I re-upped my Xbox Game Pass subscription to kind of catch up on things that have accumulated or that I was interested in. This time, paid for by Cheez-Its. I don't know if I mentioned that previously, but I'd gotten like a free month of Xbox Game Pass for buying Cheez-Its. Had to cash it in before June, so got around to it. And so playing a few things. It's always like hit or miss, kind of by design, because if there were things I knew I would love, I probably would have bought them when they came out. So these are like a bunch of maybes I'm filtering through. Tried a game called Genesis Noir, which is a kind of artsy indie title, which is presented with kind of, I don't know, like mid-century animation style. I associate this kind of stuff with like, I don't know, groovy 60s kind of stuff. But it's like kind of like, it's like a lot of dark backgrounds and stylized white characters. The setup for the game is like, it's a murder and you're trying to like solve and or somehow prevent the murder, but the whole thing is kind of sloppily metaphorical for the Big Bang and the like history of the universe. It's like it's recontextualizing the Big Bang as a bullet from a gun, right? So like it's about as up its own butt as that elevator pitch makes it sound.
The big blam.
Which, like the style of it is pretty cool, but it's hardly interactive. And it's just kind of like, I don't know, it's like a very slow version of like a Where's Waldo or a hidden object kind of game almost, where I'm just like moving a cursor around the screen, seeing what I can interact with. So I did stick with it for a few hours, but it was just slow enough, and it started to kind of like spread itself a little too thin. Like it wasn't just Big Bang. There was like, evolution stuff in there, like history of life on Earth, etc. And I kind of petered out on that. I also didn't stick with Code Vein, which sometimes gets called Anime Souls, which in gameplay is a lot like Dark Souls, but it's very anime styling. In both the character designs, there's a lot of like jiggling breasts on scantily clad female characters.
So it's very Senran Kagura.
Yeah, like not quite as like shameless or nakedly, if you'll forgive the expression.
Nakedly naked.
Right. Like if I saw somebody playing Senran Kagura, I would have assumptions about their motivations for playing that game, or if I saw somebody playing like Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball, I'd be like, I know what's going on here, and I should back out of the room.
I actually had no idea what Senran was the first time I played one of those games. I got a code for one of the 3DS games, and so it had the pretty anime women in. I'm like, all right, whatever. And so I start to play, and you're fighting, and I'm realizing, hey, her clothes are shredding off.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's what this game is.
Yeah. And so Code Vein is a little more on the level of like the main Dead or Alive series, where there is actually like gameplay as a draw, but at the same time, like you would be maybe a little embarrassed to play it with your parents in the room. So it's kind of on that level. The story is like tropey anime stuff, and the game was like, the balance was weird. This actually ended up like, I wasn't loving the like the character designs and things like that. The music was really good. What ended up putting me off the game though was that it's mostly really easy for a Souls game. And then I got stuck on a boss, so just like this difficulty spike, and I realized I hadn't really been engaging with all the stat building, character building mechanics up until that point, and I just kind of had a gut check of like, I don't really want to go through like 20 menus and figure out how best to like grind up and configure my character for this. So I put that down. The one thing I have been playing that I'm still sticking with is called Greedfall, which is, it's a third-person computer RPG, so kind of like Witcher 2 or 3 or Dragon Age or something like that. But it takes place in a kind of a weird age of colonialization world with a bunch of different like fantasy, old world powers, all interested in colonizing this weird quasi-Native American, quasi-Celtic island called Tirfridi. And you play as a diplomat from one of those nations, and you're trying to like build alliances and unravel mysteries. And it's definitely it does not have the budget of a game like Witcher or Dragon Age, but it has, I find like the story setup and a lot of the interactions really interesting. I find it to be a really interesting world in a way that game worlds often aren't. So that and Final Fantasy XIV are what I've been dividing my time between these days.
Yeah, I'm enjoying Final Fantasy XIV more than I was. I think that one of the biggest faults of that game is that it takes so long, at least in my opinion, for the story to get interesting, for you as a character to even look interesting. You know, it's really not until about level 50. And I do find that you level up kind of fast, at least up until that point, and then that's when it seems like you start leveling up a lot slower. But now that, I've completed all the ninja quests and I finally have cool armor, and the story is picking up more, I'm actually enjoying it more, because I really just felt like I was just kind of getting through this story just to get to the point where I didn't look like an idiot and I wasn't in this like ugly, stupid leveling gear. But now the story is actually pulling me in. It's more compelling, but I'm still I haven't yet gotten into Heavensward, and so the voice acting is still really, really bad. So I'm just, luckily you can skip most of it, almost all of it, and so I'm reading faster than the characters are speaking and skipping past as much as possible. But
yeah, some of the voices are like passable at best, but a lot of them are just atrocious.
Really bad. But so that's what I've actually been spending the majority of my time on. And then, as I mentioned before, I play a little bit of Animal Crossing New Horizons every day. I just do my daily tasks. I'm mainly looking out for red every day. And I haven't really I haven't been mentioning Animal Crossing New Horizons just because I'm not doing anything new. But that's actually starting to frustrate me because, the game is a little over a year old now. And it's just really wanting for content. And that became even more apparent to me than it already was, because I started picking up Pocket Camp again. I've been like really into Pocket Camp, and there's so much furniture and there's just so much stuff. Of course, it's a little annoying because some of it is behind some paywall type stuff. All of these things you can get without having to pay anything if you want to play endlessly for a really long time and get Leaf tickets, which you accumulate very, very slowly if you don't just outright buy them. So that's the biggest problem with Pocket Camp, because it's a mobile game, but it does have so much content, especially compared to New Horizons, which is really disappointing, because New Horizons is a great game and it looks great, and I would rather play a console game than a mobile game any day. So we've been playing a lot of those, and then also got back into Mario Kart Tour. Mario Kart Tour is no Mario Kart 8, that's for sure, but it's still really fun. And unfortunately, I missed the 2-week Ninja Tour, and so I missed my opportunity to get Ninja Shy Guy. So, but they do bring characters back with every new cup. You have the opportunity to get characters that were released in the past, and so I'm just playing, hoping to get Ninja Shy Guy again. But I missed Ninja Hideaway, which is one of the newer tracks that they released, and I was watching people playing on YouTube, but just heard nothing but good things about that track. People were saying the music was good. It was one of the best original tracks basically since the game has been out, and so it really sucks that I missed.
So that one, is, as far as you know, you're locked out of forever, but you still have a chance of getting Ninja Shy Guy.
Yeah, because they, at least so far as I know, they don't really bring. They will have track. Each cup or each tour has multiple cups, and there will be, a variety of tracks. But I can't really. Don't quote me on this because I might be wrong. Like, for example, I don't remember seeing any of the Tokyo tracks once the Tokyo tour was over, or the Sydney tour was right after the Ninja one, and I haven't seen any Sydney tour tracks since. So, yeah, I think like the specific, the tour specific ones, I think just go away, and you can't access them again. But the actual characters, you have a chance of earning again. But again, also paywall stuff because it's a stupid mobile game.
Sure.
You have to. You can pull. It's called like pulling a pipe, and so you just kind of like pull down on your screen a Mario pipe, and then it shoots out randomly selected characters, carts, or
so this
kites.
is how they visually represent the arm of a slot machine.
That's right. Yep, exactly. Or a gotcha machine.
Yeah.
And
I had told Angie that when Mario Kart Tour came out, I was obsessed with that game. I thought it was incredibly fun. It easily is the best, I would say, mobile title Nintendo's probably put out. Although I know Pocket Camp has its devotees, but I got frustrated with that game because I was doing the weekly cup, and I think for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, I had come out first. Now, when the game launched, there was no true, player versus player multiplayer. It was bots or ghosts or whatever. So I noticed that despite the fact I was coming in first in this, weekly tournament, by the time that I had done it like the 3rd or 4th time in a row, suddenly it was aggressively outdoing me in terms of points. And so like the last couple weeks it had done that, I was able to climb back and I ended up in first, and then I stayed in first until the next round started. But the last time, it was like this ridiculous jump in points over what I had done. And I had been playing religiously, so I had really good characters. Everything was where it would be so that I could be competitive. And then it wasn't letting me get first anymore, and it felt deliberate. And that pissed me off, and I haven't played it since. But the way Angie has been talking about it, I'm tempted to go and play it again. But the only reason I don't want to is because I feel like Nintendo is testing the waters for what they can try to get away with Mario Kart 9. And I don't want some games as service garbage as part of that experience.
yeah.
So, all the cool little characters, like the different versions of them, like Ninja Shy Guy and whatever, I love all those, and I hope that we see them in the next Mario Kart. But, some jerk is sitting there thinking, well, if they're willing to pay for all these different skins in Tour, maybe they'll be willing to pay for it in 9 in some way, and I'm not looking forward to that.
Did they do any of that kind of stuff in Splatoon?
No, you don't pay for anything in Splatoon. I think the only thing you pay for in Splatoon is the Octo expansion content, which is single player, and then it gives you Octo... you can be Octolings in multiplayer as a result, but that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, so Robert's point, and this is actually something I was going to bring up. One of the things I hope that they implement in Mario Kart 9 is the addition of the different versions of characters. Mario wearing his Hakata, and Peach and Daisy in their kimonos, Ninja Shy Guy. There's just all kinds of random ones. Like I've the current cup or the current tour, I pulled Builder Toad and Builder Luigi. And they're funny, you're driving, and then every time you do a jump or a trick, your character will do an animation like in Mario Kart 8, and like the builder ones, like they're doing stuff with their hammers, and it's really cute and it's unique. And like I pulled Bus Driver Waluigi, which I think was from the London tour, and he's wearing like a plaid his overalls, but they're plaid. And so I've pulled a lot of interesting characters, and so I would like to see that in Mario Kart 9. But yeah, not if it's going to be, not if they're going to try and sneak in microtransaction stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Yeah.
Well, good segue then into today's topic. So for our 10th episode, Zach suggested that we take a couple of different gaming profile tests.
Yeah, we spent so long talking about games. What about the player, right? So these are just
Person behind the game.
exactly.
So I will actually let Zach tell us how he came across these tests, why he thought they were worthwhile, worth taking.
Sure. So these are tests of they're alleged to measure slightly different things, but they both boil down to like the differences between players. And I'd run across one of them years ago on like a game design blog. It's called the Bartle test. It's named after a guy named Richard Bartle, just because he's the guy who came up with it. And it originated in early online gaming. So this guy invented the first MUD, which MUDs are like the predecessors of MMOs. They were like text-based virtual shared worlds. It stands for multi-user dungeon. And so this guy co-created the very first MUD, and after enough time observing a bunch of different player types, because that's kind of something that's unique about online games like that, is you can, like if you design Pac-Man, you're not going to see that many different players playing Pac-Man in the wild, but if you run an online game, you get to observe a bunch of like very divergent examples of human nature. So this was his attempt to categorize the kinds of players he saw in terms of what motivated them. So that one's like kind of homegrown, made by a designer. The other one is by a market research firm called Quantic Foundry. So this one is much more like trying to quantify players as customers in a sense. I think that's part of their motivation. They give talks at like GDC about this stuff. They sell their services to major publishers to try and quantify who's playing their game and what they're after. So one is a little more corporate than the other. One is a little more, I guess, punk in its origins. Neither to be taken all that seriously, but I thought it would be fun for us to all take these tests and kind of compare. I think we all have some sense of what each other's tastes are, but still, it's a way to have fun.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Maybe do a little bit of ribbing each other.
Well, certainly did that with me when I got my results. Well, then why don't you lead us off with, which test would you like us to start with?
Let's start with the Bartle.
Okay. So why don't you walk us through your Bartle results?
Yeah. So
before you do that, should we explain the different categories or just read our results? Or
yeah, Zach, why don't you walk us through the...
Sure. So this test divides people into like 4 types, basically, which they call explorers, achievers, socializers, and killers, being like 4 motivations for the gamer. It was originally, again, in that a multiplayer online game context, but it also can be applied to single player stuff. So I'm not going to read the whole test description, but just like a bite size to give more of a sense of what each of these are. Explorers delight in having the games expose its internal machinations to them. They try progressively esoteric actions in wild, out-of-the-way places, looking for interesting features and figuring how things work. Achievers regard points gathering and rising in levels as their main goal, and all is ultimately subservient to this. Socializers are interested in people and what they have to say. The game is merely a backdrop, a common ground where things happen to players. Interpersonal relationships are important. Finally, killers get their kicks from imposing themselves on others. This may be nice in some ways, like busybody do-gooding, but few people practice such an approach. Much more commonly, people attack other players with a view to killing off their opponents. The more massive the distress caused, the greater the killer's joy. And he further gives these cutesy playing card suit labels like Socializers heart, Achievers diamond, Explorers spades because they're like digging stuff up, and Killers clubs because they club people over the head. But so I took the test, series of questions, and my results were these are all like rated on a scale of 1 to 100. I came up as 100% Explorer, and then 53 Achiever, 40 Socializer, and just 7 Killer. I was expecting, for my sake, to have at the very least a lower Killer score than the two of you. Certainly a lower Killer score than Angela. I've seen the way you work. And I was not surprised to see Explorer top my list either. That made sense to me. I do a lot of like reading about, strategizing about games, trying to figure out all the like best ways to optimize and learn things just for the sake of optimization. Yeah, and I even spent a lot of time like researching new games to play, even before I get situated and start playing them.
So this is the description for Explorers. Explorers delight in having the game expose its internal is this machinations or machinations?
You know, I'm not confident.
Yeah, and I've never have been. I'm an English major, and I don't even know how to pronounce that out loud. Let's go with machinations. Explorers delight in having the game expose its internal machinations to them. They try progressively esoteric actions in wild, out-of-the-way places, looking for interesting features, i.e. bugs, and figuring out how things work. Scoring points may be necessary to enter some next phase of exploration, but it's tedious, and anyone with half a brain can do it. Killing is quicker and might be a constructive exercise in its own right, but it causes too much hassle in the long run if the deceased return to seek retribution. Socializing can be informative as a source of new ideas to try out, but most of what people say is irrelevant or old hat. The real fun comes only from discovery and making the most complete set of maps in existence. Do you feel that accurately describes you and your gameplay style?
I don't know if to a T, but I definitely see myself in there. I am a big believer in making your own maps, making your own notes, and deepening, at least for me, deepening my appreciation of the game.
I mean, that's how you play the original Zelda. You and your dad actually drew out a map.
I need to give my mom credit for those maps too.
Okay.
Like she for when she was playing games on the NES in particular, she had copious notes. She would write down things every villager said. She had like notebooks, maps for everything.
So you got your explorer tendencies from your mom then?
Probably from both, but yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Let me pull up these test results here. So I scored 67 Killer, 60 Achiever, 53 Explorer, and 20 Socializer. Yeah, I'm not really surprised by the way this broke down for me. The Killer part, if I think about how I play really any game, if it's story based, I am invested in the story. I should note, I am a really, really, like with pretty much everything in my life, I'm a really picky person. Although I wouldn't really say I'm a picky eater. Everybody's got their likes and dislikes, and I do too. But other than that, I'm extremely picky about everything in my life, and that includes what I play. I've certainly not played anywhere near as many games as Robert and Zach. But when I do, there's something about that game that I really like, and so I'm invested in it, even if it's not super story based. But thinking about the games that I tend to gravitate towards and my play styles, I am definitely more aggressive. I'm definitely more about the offense than the defense. I mean, even in Pokemon, like whenever I'd get something, like my Pokemon would learn something like Swords Dance or whatever, as soon as I could get rid of that, I would get rid of that. And maybe more tactical players, are like, well, those are good moves to know.
Is Swords Dance like a buff? Like increases your attack power?
I think it increases your attack, if I'm remembering correctly. But
you can't stand the idea of pressing a button to increase your attack and then pressing a button to attack. You just want to press the attack button twice.
Yeah, no, that is a turn wasted in my opinion. So I'm definitely more on the offensive, and so even in a game like like Mario Kart, you're just racing, but it has that aspect of attacking other players, and I can definitely get more aggressive in that regard. But you do also have to play defensively in Mario Kart if you want to win. But yeah, for the achiever thing, I think of like Animal Crossing, and how like in New Horizons right now, my goal is filling up my catalog, completing my catalog with all the different color variations of all the different items, completing my museum, but in particular the art wing, the art gallery. And so, yeah, I mean, in that way, I'm an achiever. I'm not like someone who's obsessed with 100%ing a game, or getting all the trophies or whatever. But yeah, if it's something that I'm really interested in, then yeah, I'm gonna try collecting all of those things that I'm interested in. Explorer, yeah, 53 is not necessarily an off score in this regard, I think, because I think of like games like Yakuza 0 or Witcher 3, where I did get a lot of enjoyment out of like looking around in the different nooks and crannies of Tokyo or Osaka or the continent. I think for Witcher 3, whatever that world is called, but yeah, exploring and finding things I get a lot of enjoyment out of. But yeah, of the four, Socializer having such a low score, yeah, I don't care. Like with Final Fantasy XIV, it's a super social game. People have their guilds and they love getting together, and you'll be walking around towns and you'll see people that are just, they've gotten together just to dance together.
Yeah.
And they're just standing in doorways dancing. Or yeah, and it's just not really my thing. Now, like one interesting social aspect, can you remind me the name of the author of Berserk?
Kentaro Miura, I think.
Yeah, he just passed away, and condolences to his family. But he just passed away, and so in Final Fantasy XIV, Zach and I were playing a couple days ago. I think it was the day that he died.
Well, he died actually early May. It just only got announced.
Okay. Yes. Well, everyone had just found out, and this was just a couple days ago. And we were in what is that? Ul'dah?
Yeah, Ul'dah.
Yeah, and running around, and all of these dark nights. Just I think by the time we saw it, it was hundreds. And then I think by the next day, I would not doubt it was in the thousands of dark nights, just standing in Ul'dah with their little campfire minions, just standing there, just to honor this incredibly loved author.
I think it was just spontaneous, like a couple people started off, and then every time somebody who has a Dark Knight job teleports into Ul'dah, they're just like, oh, I guess this is what I'm doing now.
Yeah, and so those social aspects of games can be really interesting, but they're just not for me. I'm just there for the game and the story. And I mean, I guess you could say something like getting enjoyment out of competing against people online in Smash or in Mario Kart is a bit social, but that's about as far as I go.
I think only if your motivation is to hang out. So there's like a social aspect of like you and Robert and your cousins getting together to play Mario Kart.
Yes,
but
that's about as far as.
But not with strangers.
No.
I don't know if you were at all surprised by me having Explorer as my highest or Killer as my lowest, but I was absolutely not surprised by you having Killer as your highest and Socializer as your lowest. If anything, I expected your results to be more extreme.
In the spirit of keeping people informed here, for Killer, where did that go? Here we go. Here's the definition for killers. Killers get their kicks from imposing themselves on others. This may be nice, i.e. busybody do-gooding, but few people practice such an approach because the rewards, a warm, cozy inner glow apparently, aren't very substantial. Much more commonly, people attack other players with a view to killing off their personae, hence the name for this style of play. The more massive the distress caused, the greater the killer's joy at having caused it. Normal point scoring is usually required so as to become powerful enough to begin causing havoc in earnest, and exploration of a kind is necessary to discover new and ingenious ways to kill people. Even socializing is sometimes worthwhile beyond taunting a recent victim, for example in finding out someone's playing habits or discussing tactics with fellow killers. They're all just means to an end, though, only in the knowledge that a real person somewhere is very upset by what you've just done, yet can themselves do nothing about it. Is there any true adrenaline-shooting, juicy fun?
Extremely strongly reminds me of, I think this is the previous episode of Robert's anecdote about counter camping somebody.
Yes. Yes.
There was a counter camp story I didn't share last time that I'm going to share right now.
Okay.
It was another incident where this person kept camping a certain area. I believe this was, again, Black Ops, the first Black Ops. And so what I did was, like older shooter games especially, you could really figure out where people were going to spawn. So by the time you get to Black Ops, it wasn't as easy to figure out where everyone was going to spawn, but I could always figure a general area of where you're likely going to appear if I just slaughtered you. So this idiot was mad because I kept coming to get him out of his little hidey hole. And so what I started doing is every time I'd kill him, I would progress further away from the spot that I was at towards where I thought he would be spawning. And I think I killed him 7 or 8 times in a row because every single time he just rushed where he knew I had been right into my line of sight and I'd kill him. Oh, that was great.
This is why Robert is also a killer like me.
Yeah. So my killer ranking was 87%. 67% explorer, 33% achiever, and 13% socializer. Remind me though what achiever is again?
The definition?
Yeah.
Achievers regard points gathering and rising in levels as their main goal, and all is ultimately subservient to this. Exploration is necessary only to find new sources of treasure or improve ways of wringing points from it. Socializing is a relaxing method of discovering what other players know about the business of accumulating points, that their knowledge can be applied to the task of gaining riches. Killing is only necessary to eliminate rivals or people who get in the way, or to gain vast amounts of points, if points are awarded for killing other players.
Okay. Well, looking at my results, I guess I'm not surprised that I'm killer.
We're not.
I mean, I don't know. I guess part of it, and that's the reason Socializer's so low on there for me, I have no I gain nothing from like showing up in some game where it's like, look at all these strangers, I have new friends, oh, we're all part of this group, and I don't care. It's like, it's so like full respect to the Berserk tribute, that was kind of cool, but like I don't get it. My brain's not wired for like, I'm going to show up in this fake town square and, hi, let's dance. I'm just like, where's the next mission? Send me now.
Yeah, I was like, for me, it's almost an annoyance. I'm just trying to go through the game. I'm heading to my next story quest, and there's like these 5 or 6 people that are standing in a doorway, and they're all doing there's this dance you can do in Final Fantasy XIV, and it's timed perfectly, so they're all doing it at the exact same time, and I'm just rushing through them like, I don't care. Like, I'm on to my next story quest.
Yeah, I don't know what it is with that kind of stuff. I just find it annoying, and like, if I'm going to socialize with anyone, it's going to be people I know. So, like, with Call of Duty, I had that group of friends that I would play with, and that was fun. So, that was, I guess, the extent of my socializing. Zach mentioned something about family. I'll socialize with family because we're playing Mario Kart or Smash or whatever, but in terms of me going online to play, it's like, oh, wow, an invite to join up to play multiplayer with someone. Denied.
Yeah.
Not interested. Don't know you.
Yeah. That's why I'm glad Zach and I will do these dungeons in Final Fantasy XIV together, because I think it's considered good manners or good etiquette to say hello, because when you're doing these dungeons, you get thrown together with random people, which is, perhaps not surprisingly, my least favorite part of the experience is having to do dungeons with strangers. But I'm glad I do this with Zach because he one is the one with the keyboard, and two is the one who will, if we jump in and he'll just quickly type, hi or hello or something like that.
So in fairness, I do think there are times in my life, though, where I haven't been completely antisocial. That's where the 13%, I guess, comes in. Because, I remember playing Destiny, and I mentioned this, I think, in the last podcast. And you can dance in Destiny in the first one. You can make your character do that. Mm-hmm. I remember just randomly doing that, I guess, to be annoying. So maybe I get it a little more than I'm admitting to, but it's just not necessarily my thing.
Honestly, that sounds like a more killer way to socialize. You're imposing yourself on other people if you're doing it to be annoying.
Well, that's true. Well, in terms of the killer thing, I do like competition. We talked about that last time. So I guess that makes sense. I really do enjoy seeing another person's skills set against, an actual human player. And so that's appealing. In terms of explorer, I do like exploring. I don't know that I want 100% most games. There are certain series where I do feel that way. So Mario games, I want to get every star. I don't know why. But I don't necessarily care about doing that for Zelda. So I don't usually go and get every heart container. I'll get a lot of them, but I don't need all of them.
Same.
Banjo-Kazooie, those games, I would obsessively get all the jigsaw pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think in terms of games, because when I'm looking at the achiever part, I'm thinking of RPGs that I've played, and Pokemon, I will try to get my party leveled up and really powerful, but I've never gotten a Pokemon all the way up to level 99.
Same.
I don't really get much pleasure out of doing that. But in terms of finding all of the stuff in certain games, I do. The game that comes right into my head is Mario RPG. I remember when that game came out, we had the Player's Guide, the Nintendo Power Player's Guide, and I saw the lazy shell weapon and armor, and how there was this whole chain of events that you had to go through in order to get it. And that was incredibly appealing to me. So stuff like that fascinates me in a game. I love finding secrets. I love, so Mario Sunshine, the level where I think you're in Noki Bay, and you go into this big glass bottle. And in the bottle, there's this weird sort of multi-halled, I don't even know what you would call it, some kind of a chamber. And behind the door of one of them, if you position the camera, you can see a book that's behind the door. You can't access it in-game, and it was incredibly fascinating just to see. That's the sort of thing I like in games.
That stuff is great. Yeah, I do think there's, at least for me, there's a difference between being motivated to get your number all the way up and getting something special, right? Like the lazy shell, for example, right? That's not just, it's more powerful. It's why is it called lazy? What's special about it? You get curious about it a different way.
Yeah. And that I think that's also part of the reason I find the cutting room floor. I've mentioned that website before, tcrf.net. Those guys are data miner people. They go into the code of games, stuff like that. Look for secrets. That also tickles my brain. I like kind of knowing, what elements weren't used, what things did you find that never made their way into the final product. And particularly with older games, that stuff is even more curious to me. If you played GoldenEye growing up, there was that island off in the distance in the dam level where, so the opening level, you get up on the dam and you can see there's looks like a guard tower, and you can actually shoot it in the windows out and stuff, and there's no way to access it. And there were so many rumors of how you could actually get over there and ways to do it that none of them were true. Smash Bros. Melee, everyone was insistent that Sonic, I think at least Sonic and Tails maybe, were in it. And there was this ridiculous challenge. It was you had to beat, what's it called in Smash Bros? The Cruel?
Yeah, Cruel Melee.
Yes, you had to get some number of kills in Cruel Melee, and I remember trying forever and was just like, I can't do it. I don't know how anybody could do it. And of course, that turned out not to be real.
It reminds me of trying to bring Eris back in Final Fantasy VII.
Yep.
Or Leo in Final Fantasy VI. Do you remember the Shenlong rumors for Street Fighter 2?
Mm-mm.
So Ryu has like a win quote where he says, "You must defeat Shenlong to stand a chance." But I think Shenlong is just like a mistranslated Dragon Punch. It's like he's trying to say like, you got to learn to deal with my Dragon Punch if you're going to have a chance against me. But people thought like, who is Shenlong? And EGM posted, not posted. Back in the days of paper, they called it published, an issue of EGM where it had turned out to just be an April Fool's joke, but they didn't say this up front. This of like, you got to get through like every stage and the highest difficulty without ever getting hit once. If you perfect every round, then after you beat M. Bison, Shenlong will show up out of nowhere. And I don't even know how many man hours or boy hours they wasted as a result of that.
That's incredibly funny. I guess the last of these sort of things, of course, is the stop and swap in Banjo-Kazooie. That, completely was mystifying. It's like, oh, wow, here's the codes in Nintendo Power, and you can get these eggs, and what do they do? And, 20 years later, nobody knows because they never actually ended up doing anything with it. But, so explore all that. That's me. And then, just to touch on Achiever to finish it off. I like grinding when I'm into the game. So like Mario RPG, I definitely would grind and get my characters super powerful. Pokemon, even though I never ended up fully beating it, Dragon Quest 9, I believe. That's the one that was on DS.
There were multiple ones on DS, but that was the one that was original to DS.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that game was really fun. And I don't know why I ended up not continuing, but I was playing it for hours and got hell of powerful. So, that appeals to me. But like in terms of like, I don't know, I guess, I'm going to go get all this loot so that I can level up and do this and do that. Like, it really depends on my attachment to the game, on how much I actually want to go do that. So that was my results for this test.
And one thing I wanted to note about Socializer, I think part of the reason why, unsurprisingly, my score is also the lowest. I had scored 20 on Socializer. It was Zach and I were playing in a dungeon, and in Final Fantasy XIV, and the tank. This is part like. So many things. I get worried about, being perceived as the weakest link, dragging the party down or not doing what I'm supposed to be doing right. But I at least know, thanks to Zach, let the tank go ahead. They should be in the lead. Let them pull enemies, meaning the enemy will focus its attention on the tank, and then everybody can jump in and start attacking. We were playing with someone who either didn't know this or didn't care. I don't know. But this person kept going ahead of the tank. And so they're pulling enemies. But the tank is also pulling enemies because that's what the tank is supposed to be doing. So we were just getting inundated by all of these enemies. It's fun and it's challenging when you're going against this massive group of enemies at once. But also that's not how you're supposed to be playing. And you don't know if everybody in the party is comfortable with that type of gameplay, and also just that's not what you're supposed to be doing. So just let the tank do what they're going to do. And even after dropping into the chat, hey, so and so, let the tank pull. The message didn't really seem to get across entirely, and so that's just a couple of the different reasons why I just, when it comes to playing socially or playing together, and especially with people you don't know, I'm just not into it.
Yeah, even I scored higher on Socializer than the two of you, but even still, it was a lowish score. That's definitely, as a group, that's our lowest motivation, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I find it kind of fascinating, honestly. It's not necessarily the socializing aspect of that kind of thing, like the dungeon experience you're talking about, but observing of and coming to understand the kind of the culture of the game, right? It's like if people want to do whatever they want to do, like that's fine. Like if they have their own private party they're doing a dungeon with, but just kind of coming to learn like how the community has, through all these individual interactions, created this culture and this expectation, and being able to see like, you're messing up, buddy. You're the jerk.
All right. Well, so those were our Bartle test results. So now we're going to move on to our Quantic Foundry results. Zach, why don't you explain the different...
Sure. So, like I mentioned at the outset, this is a little more corporate in its origins. This was started by a couple of people that had worked at Ubisoft, and they had like a math or statistical background, something like that, and then went off to create their own market research agency, and this is their thing. So they are, like with the Bartle, it's like a series of questions they present people with, kind of like, would you rather kind of questions, and they break player motivations down into 12 different categories. They're all fairly self-explanatory, so I'm not going to read blurbs to explain them, but I will list out what the categories are. Under the heading of action, they have destruction and excitement. That is maybe a little less clear, but that's like enjoying fast-paced, intense games with an adrenaline rush, that kind of thing. Under the social heading, they have competition and community. So, competitive versus co-op, sort of. Under mastery, they have challenge and strategy. So, practicing and honing your gameplay versus planning in advance. Under the heading of achievement, they have completion versus power. So this kind of speaks to what Robert was getting at earlier with like talking about the lazy shell versus just leveling up your Pokemon, right? So this is like a new exciting thing to getting all the things they already get in the game versus just making your power level go up. Under creativity, we have discovery and design. So discovery being like, looking for secrets, and design being kind of like more like Mario Maker, Minecraft, creation stuff. And then finally in the immersion category, we have fantasy. It's like imagining being someone or somewhere else, and story, just wanting, I guess that's fairly straightforward. So they break them out into these 6 pairs that the test makers say are like relatively correlated. That's kind of a mixed bag, at least looking at our results. Like there's some where we're all just really split on the 2 subcategories. So I don't necessarily put a lot of faith in that. But we do all have like percentage ratings for each of these 12 categories. And then this other thing that I'll just say up front that I don't put a lot of stock in, the test also tries to assign like your player type, which is like some kind of cutesy label. Like for me, for example, they labeled me an acrobat. And they go on to say acrobats are solo gamers who primarily want to take on challenging gameplay, and they want to practice over and over again until they can take on the most difficult missions and bosses in the game. And like, that's not completely off base in terms of like describing my motivations, but like, it's also a little silly. Anyhow.
So do you want to start then with your results?
So yeah, I'm just going to go through the 12 categories and just list out what my percentages are. Sure. It is like, over 50 is above average, right?
Well, then why don't you start with the type that you were assigned, and then you break things down by your percentage.
Okay. Well, like I said, my type is acrobat, which is like focused, like the description of acrobat is focused entirely on challenge, like practicing something over and over, and like it does resonate somewhat. I think about like what appeals to me about a game like Dark Souls or Sekiro. It's like getting to a challenging boss, failing, trying again, failing again, maybe like getting a little bit further each time, and finally getting that euphoria when I complete it. I do appreciate that, and I've learned that I like to enjoy playing games on higher difficulties specifically for that purpose. I get to engage with aspects of the game that I wouldn't otherwise be able to. So I feel like my eye roll at the gamer type is a little bit for the terminology of acrobat. Like, I don't even know that I would connect the word acrobat to that description, right?
Yeah.
That name in and of itself reeks of, like, you know, a bunch of boobs in a corporate office sitting around. So what do we call this, guys? Are we feeling acrobat? I think that, that is, oh, God.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But the other thing is, I feel like it really just oversimplifies. If you go back to, like, the Bartle description of Explorer, it does talk about how these other things fit into this overarching categorization, and this is like, I don't think it even covers half the picture.
Yeah.
To go through the percentages, I have a 72% for destruction and a 76% for excitement, which makes sense. I like a lot of action games, and I do enjoy blowing stuff up, right? I do enjoy, like, the adrenaline thrill. Under social, I have 27% for competition, so definitely a low score, and 52% for community, so kind of a split there. And I think that's fairly accurate too. If anything, I might think that's a little high for competition. It's not that I don't have a competitive streak, but I'm usually much more like PvE, player versus environment, or player versus enemy in my motivations, than wanting to compete against other people. I do have a sort of, like, I don't play multiplayer games really aside from Final Fantasy XIV. And in that context, I don't have a free company, or a guild is what that would be called in most MMO terms. Like, I don't have a set group of people I hang out with or do stuff with, because I don't go into the game to have, like, a set social experience with people. I do kind of like just finding strangers and doing things with them, right? Like the kind of emergent social behavior. So I think 52 kind of makes sense there. Challenge I have at 83. That was my highest percentage, I think. So maybe that's why they called me an acrobat. But yeah, I think, like, that Dark Souls experience, I think that does make sense for me. And then 49% for strategy, which is also not completely off base, I think. Sometimes I really just want to get in there and slice stuff up. But I do also enjoy taking time in advance to either plot out my moves, plot out how I'm going to build my character, or even there have been times I've played, like, Final Fantasy VIII, for example, and I've spent hours, like, plotting out basically every decision I was going to make over the course of the game, and, like, where am I going to get this spell? Who am I going to equip it to for what stats? And, like, get really into it like that. I might expect strategy to be higher, but I think it's a reasonable score for me. Under achievement, 34% for completion. This makes sense. I'm not super completionist in my leanings. And 62% for power. Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense for me. I do play a fair number of RPGs. I do like getting more powerful weapons. It is nice to see the bigger numbers, especially when you get a critical hit. Creativity is one of the... creativity for me was the group with the biggest gulf biggest gulf altogether. I got a 56% for discovery. So just experimenting with things, tinkering, but only a 10% for design. And yeah, I have never been, like, super into character creation. I was playing Final Fantasy XIV for like 6 years before I really started engaging with the glamour system, which is how your character looks. I've never been into Minecraft. I never did Mario Maker.
Yeah.
So that makes sense for me. And then immersion. So fantasy, I scored as 24% and story 21%. Part of me thinks those should be higher. Just thinking of, like, the kind of game worlds that I like to engage with.
Particularly story. You seem really, like, even just, like, with Greedfall, definitely not my type of game. And a big part of it is because the world, the story, but it seems like that seems to be a gulf in, like, when I compare the games that we like, it's a big part of it seems to be the story. You think it's interesting, I don't. So yes, that seems like should be higher for you.
Yeah. The one thing I will say in the test defense here, under story, it says gamers who score low on story tend to find dialogue and quest descriptions to be distracting and skip through them if possible. And for me, it really depends. Sometimes if I am really invested in the world of a game, I will go like through the data log and read everything and read all the quest descriptions. But there are also plenty of games where I'm just kind of like, yeah, whatever. So for me, I think it really depends on the game. There are a lot of games where I just don't engage with that stuff much at all.
I see.
I kind of wonder, not to sidetrack, but how much these sort of forms of analysis are. I mean, I get that this is a corporate thing, so I'm assuming it's as up to date as you can be. But like, there's so many different types of games now, and it's like, you know, if you go back through older issues of like video game magazines, it's kind of funny if you look at like, you know, top 100 lists, greatest games ever, and you look at what were considered the greatest games ever, and a lot of them still are, but just the different ways of playing versus like EGM's top 100 list from when I was like middle school or something versus what they would put together now. It's like night and day, because when they talk about that, like with story, you know, oh, you don't want to look through lists or go through a bunch of menus or whatever. It's like, yeah, but like some games, you almost have to. Like, you know, Mario is famous for, oh, it teaches you how to play it as you're playing. You know, it doesn't give you instructions. It's like you learn by playing. Oh, move forward, hit Goomba, die. And then you realize I can't touch that thing. So you go forward and you realize, well, I can jump. Maybe you jump over it. And then you realize, oh, I can jump on it. But then it's like, so you can do that with that game. That's totally fine. But then here comes like a Final Fantasy 14. And it's like, you're more than likely not going to be able to just start doing stuff. You're going to have to sit and read something to an extent. So it's like...
Yeah, I would not have been able to get started as quickly with Final Fantasy 14 if I didn't have Zack explaining all the different menu systems. And
then there's other issues too in terms of like with narrative where... I'm fine with reading dialogue, but when I have to sit and listen to some shrieking, creepy anime voice for something, I instantly stop caring. It's like, I'm like, oh my god, it's like that is so nauseating. But then if you take that same dialogue and I'm just reading it, I have no problem, and I read it faster. So like video games are interesting in that regard because I've always thought how people can make parallels with like games and movies. But you can also easily make parallels with games and comics or games and... I mean, look at entirely text-based narratives. That's more in common with a novel than anything else. And I think that all these different comparisons I'm talking about are not necessarily always thought about because the industry... It's kind of like when you have the transition from 2D to 3D and the industry is just like, yeah, 3D, 3D, 3D. Not thinking, well, 2D is still a thing. You can do stuff with it. With like narrative-based games, it's just, oh yeah, it needs to be like movie. It needs to be like Uncharted. And like that's what we're seeing so much of. Like Sony's obsession is that basically right now. And it's like, well, yeah, you can do that, but then you can also give me a game where I blast through a bunch of dialogue just scrolling through it. Like, anyway.
I find it really depends for me. Like, for a long time, I was playing games with voice acting, wishing it didn't have voice acting, you know. But, you know, there are games like The Witcher, which I think would be much poorer without the voice acting in them.
Well, I think that almost like every game that Supergiant has made benefits from its voice acting because they know how to implement it really well. Like Hades, the voice acting is perfect. Bastions is super neat.
You know, we were playing games in the 90s, and like, especially in my case, when I was into like PlayStation and Saturn games before the two of you were, so I was exposed to a lot of bad voice acting on JRPGs. You know, if either of you have ever played or seen any of Grandia or Lunar, it's just like a lot of the early English dubs for Japanese games and anime were atrocious.
Which is fun, though. Some of it's fun because it's so atrocious.
It can be, in retrospect.
Yeah.
It can be.
All right. So my gamer type on this Quanta Gamer test was Bounty Hunter Skirmisher. The mottos for these two, for Bounty Hunter, high octane, solo world exploration, skirmisher, jumping into the fray of battle. I think for me, especially identifying with the the solo part here. I would much prefer to explore a world alone than having to do things with other players. Although, interestingly, I think Final Fantasy XIV is the only game I would actually prefer to play with Zack than play alone. So, so my dominant type is the bounty hunter, but I also lean toward a secondary player type, which is the skirmisher. Bounty hunters are solo, action-oriented explorers who want game worlds that they can make their own through customization and discovery. They also enjoy power progression and unleashing mayhem. Skirmishers want fast-paced team arenas that are accessible and easy to jump into. They are highly spontaneous gamers who dislike games that require thinking and planning. Yeah, I mean, you know, I've never been into, say, for example, RTS, real-time strategy games. Yeah, I'm just not really into the long-winded plotting, scheming, planning. I'd rather just jump in and play.
Imagining you wearing a t-shirt that says Leroy Jenkins did nothing wrong.
Leroy Jenkins?
Are you not familiar with that?
No.
So it's actually, it comes from World of Warcraft. It was like a video. It turned out to be fabricated, but it was like a bunch of people like in-game talking to each other, planning about how to beat the next boss. And then like halfway through the discussion, one of the characters, Leroy Jenkins, gets like bored and just yells, Leroy Jenkins, and rushes in, and everyone dies as a result of Leroy pulling the boss early.
Well, I wouldn't pull a boss early because I have better etiquette, but yeah, I can understand his impatience. So comparing, my percentages here, for the action category, I scored 97% on excitement and 90% on destruction.
I think that 97 was the highest any of us got on anything.
Destruction says that I tend to gravitate towards games like Call of Duty or Battlefield. And if they accidentally find themselves in games like The Sims, they are the ones who figure out innovative ways to get their Sims killed. Yeah, The Sims is one of those games that I just have never had any interest in. I don't understand why people love it. No offense to anyone who does. But yeah, if that's what I was doing in The Sims, that is what if I have found myself playing The Sims, yeah, I'd just be finding ways to get the Sim killed. I love Call of Duty. I think it's a lot of fun. I never ended up playing Battlefield, but yeah, that's about on point. For excitement, 97%. Yeah, I mean, it says in the description that I might gravitate towards games like Halo, Street Fighter, Injustice, or Bit Trip Runner. For me, even though I'm not very good at Street Fighter, I get a lot of fun out of that. For me, it would be more like Smash. Or Mario Kart, for that matter. Says people who score high on this component enjoy games that are fast-paced, intense, and provide a constant adrenaline rush. So certainly Mario Kart and Smash in that regard. For the social components, 92% on competition, 4% on community.
Yep.
Yeah, that's about right. So pretty self-explanatory. The mastery components, this is for players who like challenging gaming experiences with strategic depth and complexity. I got 12% on challenge and 5% on strategy. So again, not a surprise. It's funny because Dark Souls is actually a game that's listed as something for players who score high on the challenge component. And I actually tried to give Dark Souls, I think it was Dark Souls 3, a shot. I didn't stick with it. I was getting extremely frustrated. It's a great game. It's a beautiful game. It's very interesting, but it just ultimately wasn't something I stuck with. Although I do remember I played late one night. Zach had gone to bed, and what is the hub that you return to constantly in 3?
Firelink.
Yeah, so I'm in the Firelink Shrine, and there was this shadowy figure wandering around outside. I just happened to randomly encounter him. He was so annoying, and I stuck with it. I killed him, and I told, because Zach asked me about it in the morning. It was like, so what did you think? What did you do? And I said, well, I encountered this guy. I don't know who he was. I just thought he was annoying, and I said that I killed him, and Zach seemed really surprised and said, I didn't do that until way later, because I had just started the game. So that was more of my killer instinct coming out, where if that was supposed to be something you were supposed to do later, I didn't recognize it as such. I just couldn't stand this
It's
guy.
definitely something. This is for anyone who's familiar with Dark Souls 3. This is like outside Firelink Shrine, the guy in just like a loincloth or rags who's got like a katana and just, you know, baits players into attacking him and then messes them up. It's definitely something that's possible to beat at the beginning of the game, as Angela has demonstrated. But he can also kill you really quickly, and it's a big step up from the enemies you've fought before that.
So, for the achievement components, I ranked 46% completion and 56% power. High achievement scores are for players who are driven to accrue power, rare items, and collectibles, even if this means grinding. Gamers with low achievement scores have a relaxed attitude towards in-game achievements and don't worry too much about their scores or progress in the game. So if you've got a high completion score, which I wouldn't necessarily say I did at 46%, you want to finish everything the game has to offer. I don't. So, but you know, I do, however, like in games like Ghost of Tsushima, I wanted all of the Mongol artifacts. And so even though I did not ultimately end up going back and finding actually, or did I? I might have done that at least. I think I went back after I finished the game and found all the Mongol artifacts. But then some of the other things like, I didn't get all the samurai banners, even though I kind of wanted to. So it just depends on how much those things interest me. For power, gamers who score high in power, they strive for power in the context of the game world. They want to become as powerful as possible, and they seek out the strongest tools, the strongest armor and weapons. It's not necessarily anything I'm super driven by, which is why my score was 56% there. For the creativity components, I scored 25% on discovery and only 10% on design. Makes sense. The only game with any design components I've ever been interested in is Animal Crossing. Making my island look the way I want it, and more importantly, making my house the way I want it, upgrading it to the max, having all the possible rooms, having all of the coolest items. Otherwise, something like Minecraft, zero interest. Mario Maker, I really didn't play much of that at all. The discovery component, which I scored a little higher on, 25%, but that's not high at all. Players are constantly asking what if, for them, game worlds are fascinating contraptions to open up and tinker with in an MMO, which I don't play. Well, maybe Final Fantasy XIV would be an MMO, but other than that, I don't play those. In an MMO, they might swim out to the edge of the ocean to see what happens. You might experiment with day to night proximity to zombies. Definitely not. In Days Gone, there actually is a day to night component. In terms of what happens if you go out to fight zombies during the day or the night. I would constantly go to bed so I wasn't out at night when the freakers are out in droves. You can encounter hordes of freakers at night more commonly than you would during the day. So no, I am not interested in discovering what happens if I'm around zombies at night during the day. In the immersion components, I actively avoided it. The immersion components, I scored 38% on fantasy and 13% on story. The difference being fantasy is for players who want gaming experiences that allow them to become someone else somewhere else. Story is players who want games with elaborate campaign storylines and a cast of multi-dimensional characters with interesting backstories and personalities.
Gotta keep up with your soaps.
Yeah, that's the only time I'm interested in stories like that. Or, The Young and the Restless. No, but yeah, I mean, I'm not the type of person who's like, I need to be deeply immersed. I'm not. Interestingly, though, I would rather have characters that are like a predetermined, pre-created character. I can't stand character creators. It really sucks when your character is just this generic thing.
Well, of course, I referred you to your design score.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, and it's just not. So there are some people that are just so into character creators. They need this character to be, what do they call that? Like basically you know, they need it to represent them. I don't need that at all.
How do you feel about your scores as a whole? Was there anything?
I mean, it seems pretty spot on. I think the very heavy leanings towards, like 92% competition, 97% excitement, 90% destruction. I think that's totally really spot on, thinking of all the games that I gravitate towards. I mean, obviously my favorite series of all time is The Legend of Zelda, which I wouldn't necessarily say is destructive or super exciting or anything like that, but that may actually be an exception. Thinking of the games I played most, they do tend to be competitive. Fighting games, racing games, beat 'em ups. I like a lot of those. So
yeah, know, a lot of big games like Zelda or Final Fantasy or whatever, like they scratch a lot of different itches for a lot of different people. Like Zelda might be a game that at least clears the threshold, even if it doesn't like exemplify exciting, destructive gameplay.
Yeah.
It still scratches that itch, and then has these other things that appeal to you also.
Yeah.
Right. So that makes sense to me.
Robert?
Okay. So if I'm looking at my results, I'm going to read it a little differently than the other two. So there's your primary motivations, and I'm going to say what they are. So 65% action, 16% social, mastery 38%, achievement 20%, creativity 24%, and immersion 15%. So then if you break that down, it goes into your what they're calling your secondary motivation. So 76% excitement, 49% destruction. I think that sounds about right. I love going into a game and there's a lot of action and a lot to do. I'm not sure how that necessarily relates to like my feelings about something like Donkey Kong Country, which I'll play endlessly, but I thought those sounded accurate. Competition 39%, community 7%. So 39% for the competition. I guess that sounds right, especially because I don't play as much of like kind of online games like Call of Duty like I used to. But I definitely, if I'm going to get into that environment, it's going to be to compete. Community's so down at the bottom of my priorities for that. So then challenge 60% and strategy 22%. Yeah, I mean, I like pretty much every type of game. I think probably the only genre I'm not huge on might be like, it was just in my head and now it escaped. What was it? Because I like strategy games. Like Angie doesn't like them. I like real-time strategy and stuff like Fire Emblem, those kind of games, Advance Wars. But in terms of a game I don't like playing, I'm trying to think of strategy. Oh, it's simulation games. Sorry, I don't know why I stalled on that. So like I've never played The Sims, but I love SimCity 2000. And for me though, that game, what I loved about it wasn't the strategy of like, oh, if I do this, this, and that, the town will have money. For me, what I liked about it was like, if I place these elements here and watch time go by, I like seeing the development itself. So in that regard, it's not very strategic. It's like, give me a code so that I can have infinite money and I just get to see what my town does. I would always take some of the pre-made towns in SimCity 2000 and I would level whole giant chunks of it because you had so much money it didn't matter, and I would just restart, figure out how I wanted the roads to look, all that. And that was where I got joy.
See, when I was a kid, I used to like causing the mayhem and destruction.
Yep, with the natural disasters.
Or the alien that would come in.
Did you have the Super Nintendo version, like the original SimCity, or just SimCity 2000?
We had 2000 on a Mac that our Uncle Leonard let us play.
On the Super Nintendo version of SimCity, you can actually have Bowser come and destroy areas of your town.
That's super funny.
That's really cool.
In the like the PC or Mac version original, it was like some kind of like Godzilla type kaiju, but they made it Bowser, King Koopa for
Interesting.
for Super Nintendo.
SimCity 2000 still has one of the best soundtracks in all video games.
It's a good one.
Completion 46%, power 7%. Well, you know, like I said, completion's important to me depending on the game. Like, not every game am I going to be like, oh, I have to get, you know, every single thing. Like, I have this weird relationship with the puzzle pieces in the last 2 Donkey Kong Country games, where, like, I'm way more concerned with getting those Kong letters, and then the puzzle pieces are secondary. But anyway, that sounds about right, I think. Then discovery was 83% and design was 3%. So I do not care about character creation. Like, sometimes it's kind of cool to sit and tweak a character, but like, I get nauseated when I'm like, it's like, oh, you can expand this part of his cheeks and then do this to his jawline. and I'm just like, oh my God, I don't care. It's just too much minutia with too little reward. Like, what do I get from all that? It's like he's 100 feet from me most of the time.
Yeah, the weird thing about that for me is they usually make you do that like at minute 0 before you get invested in everything, you know? I'm just like, I just want to like get in and mess with stuff, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. And like, I've enjoyed the Mario Maker games. Those are pretty cool. But I also have never like really sat and just spent a ton of time on my own, just like, oh, making whole levels and doing this. But then Unreal Engine I'll sit and enjoy. Like, I've sat and made environments in there, and that appeals to my curiosity. But maybe on some level that taps into the part of my brain that likes arranging furniture in Animal Crossing.
You know, it's interesting, Robert. You said you got, what was it, 83% in discovery? That's really high.
Yeah.
And you know, this is, again, for players who are constantly asking, what if? So you're going to... And, you know, when I think about, like, growing up, you know, you were the one that knew, you know, about, like, the secret world in Mario World. Or you were the one that knew, like, the secrets in Donkey Kong Country that I didn't know. Like, I would not... Unless it was really obvious to me, like in Zelda, bomb that wall, because it's cracked... I wasn't the one, like, exploring and finding different ways to finish a stage like Robert would be.
Yeah, like, I remember Walden Books in South Shore in Alameda. They had a Mario World Secrets book. I wish I could remember what it was called, but it's shaped like a paperback, maybe a little bit bigger, all black and white inside. But it was a walkthrough for the entire game. And it also covered all of the secrets. And that was what was most appealing to me. It was like, oh, wait, so there's Star Road, but then, oh, you can actually go into a different world beyond that. That's even more secret. And then it changes every bit of the game, because then the Koopa Troopas are now wearing Mario masks. And that's the stuff that, even now, my brain loves more than anything else. But when it gets into the, like, creativity portion of it, it's not as big of a deal to me. I mean, it's like... I know we talk a lot about, like, even, like, representation in games, and I'm like, well, maybe tapping into this second part, you know, like, with fantasy, I'm at 15, and then story, 21, so, like, immersion for me, like, I do think the escape is more appealing to me. It's like, I don't really need a 5'8" overweight Mexican guy in the game. Like, that doesn't make me feel like I'm more part of it. And I'm not saying I don't appreciate stuff like that. Like, I played Grim Fandango, and I thought that was really cool because, like, you had some of these characters who were speaking with, like, a Hispanic accent, and I think there's even a little bit of Spanish in the game. I was like, that's kind of cool. I'm like, yeah, I've never really heard anyone talk like that, and I'm Mexican, so there was some appeal to that, but, like, the kind of way that people fixate on it now, I'm like, well, part of me is playing this not to, like, desperately recreate my life. Like, the whole point of this is, like, I can't fly down a pipe or, you know, slice a skeleton in half like Link.
How much do you identify with, like, being the character you're playing as?
I guess...
Like, when you're playing The Witcher, do you walk around saying, I'm a Witcher?
I don't know if it's necessarily that deep, But for me, it's never some kind of barrier because, like, oh, I don't look like that character.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can play Tomb Raider, and I'm not an attractive white woman. But I'm totally enjoying it, and I'm into it. And I think I mean, honestly, I feel like in some ways that's sort of the point, is that you are not the thing that you're playing as. It's like, why play if it's just going to be a recreation of what is around you? I mean, again, that doesn't mean that you can't include bits and pieces there, and there are games where maybe it's supposed to be more grounded, but overall, the escapism is what's interesting.
Yeah, I feel the same as Robert. You know, when I think of my favorite video game characters, the characters that I've liked the most, or I've been drawn to the most, or even the characters that I've identified with the most, they were completely opposite for me. The majority of them are men. Or I think of like Majima and Kiryu. I mean, they're Japanese men. Me and Robert are not Japanese, we're Mexican. Geralt. There are things about myself that I see in Geralt, and he's extra pasty and sort of borderline not even really human anymore. And so, yeah, that probably explains also why I scored as low like Robert did in these categories.
Well, it's like if you look at Metroid, I mean, Samus is one of my favorites, and I've always thought it was really cool how Samus being female is so, it's like, it's not a point of fixation. Mm-hmm. And that's why I felt Other M kind of failed in certain ways when she's like constantly saying, oh, the baby. It's just like, that's not Samus, dude. Like, Samus being a woman is immaterial. Mm-hmm. She just is a woman, and she kicks as much ass as anybody else. And especially when you're playing the Prime games and you're going through when you're scanning stuff and getting like security logs and information from the space pirates, the way that it's so clear that they're scared of her was so freaking cool to me. And again, I'm not a woman. I'm not a space bounty hunter, none of it. But as you're playing that part and you're in the game, it's really funny and cool thinking, man, I'm attacking enemies that are actually frightened of me. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so that's where my enjoyment comes in. I think this particular test, because some of my percentages feel somewhat skewed, like design's at 3%. I don't know if I'm like that disinterested, but this test I don't think spoke to me as much, because I just remember going through some of the replies, and it had a little bit of corporate robotness going on, and I think that turned me off a bit, and I didn't maybe engage with it as much as I should have, or maybe as honestly as I should have. I don't know. Also,
too, like, I am very heavily geared here towards action, and I know that that's pretty true just generally speaking, but I think of some of my favorite games like Mario RPG. That's way slower paced than some of the other games that I really enjoy. Mario RPG is one of my all-time favorite games. Pokemon, and especially Gens 1 and 2. There's battle for sure, but there's also a lot of slow plotting and talking to people and exploring the forest and the cities and towns. And this is certainly not... I think this is actually a good takeaway, a good way to kind of wrap all this up, is that these tests can really help, especially if maybe you're just getting into games and you don't really know what you might be interested in. And so this is kind of a good way to kind of gear you towards games to start with. But if you've been playing games your whole life, this is it's more of an interesting experiment. And it is interesting because like I said, not all of this is off. Some of this is clearly spot on. But it's not going to be 100% because, like I said, there are games that are not entirely in the excitement wheelhouse or action wheelhouse that I do really love.
Did either of you look at the recommendations?
Sorry, I should also know, I've put in over 1,100 hours in Animal Crossing, New Horizons, and that is not an exciting action-based game. But sorry, can you repeat what you said?
If you, I think you both have your Quantic Foundry results page up on your phone. Mm-hmm. So kind of right below the hexagonal graph, there's an Explore This Profile's video game recommendations.
Interesting. Okay, we're going to click on that. It's generating recommendations.
Yeah. So for me, I won't read the whole list, but it's suggesting things like Dark Souls, Left 4 Dead, Dead Cells, Doom, Enter the Gungeon. So it's really got like a type of game it thinks it wants me to play.
Well, for me, the first page of results are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Call of Duty games and 2 Battlefield games.
Well, actually, my recommendations are spot on, and I own all of them. Super Meat Boy, Spelunky Classic, Shovel Knight Celeste, Metroid Prime Series, Super Metroid, Galaxy, 64, Hyper Light Drifter, Resident Evil 4. Got him.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah.
When I go to the second page, it's a little more nuanced. So we got like Far Cry 4, the God of War series, Doom Eternal, Doom, Fortnite. No, thank you.
How high are your numbers? Because even on the first page, my highest score was 5.5.
6.4 is the highest one for Black Ops 4. And then the rest are in the low 5s and high 4s.
Well, I don't get those numbers in terms of...
I think
it's like strength of recommendation.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what's the highest?
How much? I think it's going to be out of 10.
Well, I don't think so, because mine is 14.0 for Super Meat Boy.
Wow, it's really got you pegged.
Okay.
I'd be curious to know what it goes up to.
Yeah.
Because it's 14.0, 12.5 for Spelunky. I don't like Spelunky that much. And then Shovel Knight 11.2.
Interesting.
Celeste is a 7.5. The irony there being that I don't think any game has ever made me as angry as Celeste. I love Celeste, but oh man, I almost broke my Pro controller. Like I don't like. Yeah, some people like smash a controller into the ground or stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't do that kind of thing. But I slapped the crap out of my controller in frustration when I was playing because I was just like, "There's no way I'm doing this wrong." I'm like, why is it just not reading this right? And I remember like smacking the thing. And to this day, I wonder if I did any damage to it. Anyway.
Yeah, interestingly, I got 56 recommended games, and almost all of them are things that I'm really not interested in. So, again, if you take these tests, dear listeners, it really is just kind of more for the fun of taking it and seeing how accurate it is to you. And it may not actually be super accurate. You know yourself best.
Yeah, I think it can be like useful or illuminating to take one of these tests, but you have to kind of take it like, I don't know, it's kind of like having your picture painted or like a caricature done or something like that. And you look at it and you're going to see aspects of yourself that you might not have thought about before, but it's not you, right? You gotta, this is like this algorithm's interpretation of you. And do we all feel like the Bartle tests results felt more?
I think so.
True to ourselves?
Yeah, because even just like describing me as a killer isn't, that still applies for a game like Mario RPG or Pokemon, where, like I said, I'm not interested in keeping the moves that are more defensive. I'm interested in keeping the moves that are more offensive. But they're completely different. Like whether you're talking about, do I take a more offensive approach in Smash Bros. Or do I take a more offensive approach in Pokemon or Mario RPG, or do I take a more offensive approach in even The Witcher 3?
Yeah.
I am still more of a killer in those games, more offensive than I am defensive.
Well, I think it's fascinating because this is just a test. It's not that serious, but
Ain't that deep.
Yeah, it is kind of part of the same wheelhouse as like algorithms of like your apps that are trying to figure out, this is the product you'll be interested in. This is the thing that you'll be interested in. And like this kind of odd notion that there's this absolute quantification of everyone. It's like, this is your algorithm. This is exactly who you are based on this, this, and that.
Yeah.
And it's this kind of obsession with it that continues to emerge that is, I don't know, it's just so like soul sucking after a certain point. Because like it's fun when you're not taking it seriously, but like the poor schmo that works at Starbucks that's like working on the app who's like told, so you need to figure out how to get people to engage, and if they're going to Starbucks twice a day, we want them to go 3 times, 4 times a day. And so that poor guy's having to look at every little thing you do and figure, okay, so if I push him here, that's enough. That's what'll get him to come in the 3rd time. It's just like, dude, I'm going to come in if I want to come in. Your stupid app means nothing to me. But like, that's what
you think.
It's like, that's what we're all kind of being funneled towards. And it's incredibly obnoxious because it's corporate driven. And like, I don't know, like, it's fascinating too because this is more of an emergent kind of thing of late, right? So like the past 10 years, let's just say, where it's really become prevalent. If you think about it, how do you create that quantification of a person if you don't have all of the trial and error before it? Because if you're starting from point zero, like if you're a kid who was born today, and if your parents dumb and they make sure that you have a smart device attached to you from childhood forward, you're already being cataloged. And so it's already going to be saying, here's everything that, Timmy likes at age 4. And it's like, so if that's what you're just endlessly doing, where does the, the trial and error come in at that point?
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be good. It just has to be better than the lack of information from like the point of view of the person trying to sell you things, right?
There are a lot of people who actually live their lives like this today, where I have no idea what I want to watch on Netflix. Let Netflix recommend to me what I'm going to watch. Or I don't even know what I want to watch, period, which is why I have Netflix. Because I don't have any existing movies or shows that I'm really interested in owning, or having like a library of like Blu-rays or whatever. I'm just going to let Netflix tell me what to watch, or Disney Plus or whatever. Or I don't know what to listen to, so I'm going to put on Spotify and just let a bunch of random songs play at me, and then I decide what I want to watch or what I want to listen to. Or games. Like I don't know what to play next, so I'm just going to do, just try out something that's available for free right now on Game Pass or something like that. This is how so many people.
How dare you?
No offense. And again, no offense to anybody who this is actually how you live your life. Everybody's different and things are going to work differently for different people. But we are kind of reaching this point where algorithms are controlling so much. And even this more corporate test, the Quantic Foundry one, it's like, oh, okay, well, based off of these, you're more likely to like these games.
It's kind of interesting. These are like, as you're describing it, these algorithms take on like a similar role as like horoscopes or Punxsutawney Phil or like reading the entrails of chickens or whatever, right?
Tea
like
leaves.
Just trying to find like, it's like, I can't decide. I don't know. Just tell me Punxsutawney Phil. Do I need to dress for winter for another 6 weeks?
Yeah. I mean, even like when you go shopping, if you're in like the Sephora app or whatever, or the Ulta app, and it's like, well, based off of your previous purchases, you bought this brow product, so maybe you're going to like this, or you tried this skincare product, maybe you're going to like this one. And it's like, well, no, probably not.
It kind of makes me think of sports. There's a lot of people who are, especially lately, they're really irritated talking about instant replay. And they're like, well, instant replay can do this, this, and that, but we still have errors in terms of, the calls that umpires and referees make. And I sympathize. Believe me, I'm a sports fan. Love the Oakland A's. But part of me likes that there is that crazy, wild element of the human error. And it is part of the game. And when you start getting to a point where you're trying to just make everything absolutely perfect, it's like, well, what's the point? It's like kind of part of it, and it's irritating when it doesn't go your way for sure. But it's like, but if something wacky happens and look at that, your team ends up getting one. It's like, you know what? That's just part of the experience, and we're veering away from that with the endless like automation and the algorithm, and that's like Netflix. I remember when I started using it. It gives you, this is an 80% match for like what you're going to watch. And I laugh because I'm thinking, this thing has no access to the videos in my brain that I've seen. So it might think, he's not going to be interested in this. And it's like when I've actually watched this entire series.
You know what actually reminds me of, we were just talking to our uncle last night. And he recently got a new car, and he was talking about how he was trying to back out of our aunt's driveway. But because the sensors in the back are so hypersensitive, it was not letting him back out. And it's for his own safety. And, it's good that these things exist. But at the same time, I was telling him, no joke, I would rather risk just getting smashed into than having my car my own car fight me and not allow me to do what I want to do because of this fear of error. Now, of course, the error here is a lot bigger than losing a baseball game. It's you could become paralyzed or lose your life, but I would rather just not be controlled by the car or really much of anything at all in my life, and just let me mess up. Let me make that mistake.
We know, Zach, what's the book called? Paco's book? Why We Shop?
Why We Buy.
Why We Buy.
The Science of Shopping by Paco Underhill.
That's right. So I've been on a reading kick lately, and Zach lent me that book, and I'm almost halfway through it. And it's fun to read because the edition he gave me is from 99 or 2000. It's around there. So it's, 20 years ago how marketing and all that worked in the United States, or more specifically, the actual physical arrangement of a store and kiosks and signs in stores. And it was kind of cool. It's cool reading it because, like, a lot of it is still applicable today. We still go to places like Target and whatever. But reading it and thinking, this guy's trying to analyze how people shop, but the majority of it was external indicators. And sure, they would go talk to people in an interview, but to clarify, Paco's company basically, like CVS would hire him and say, hey, we noticed that, sales are down. Come look at the arrangement of the store and tell us what we're doing wrong. And so Paco would show up with like a bunch of cameras and a crew of people who would film every bit of the store, every aisle. They'd go look at how every bit of the store was arranged and stocked, and then they would follow customers around. So they might pick a random person who walks in and then just trail them and then just see how long do they linger in front of the aspirin. What do they do with the aspirin bottles? What do they do with the price stickers? And then from there, create a picture of, so this is what you're doing right, this is what you're doing wrong. So like one store they had studied was in a mall, and they noticed that the aspirin sales were low. And typically people just go in and they get their aspirin. But in this store, it wasn't really working. So they figured out that the problem was that a lot of the people who were buying the aspirin in the stores were elderly or older, and it was right near where the refrigerators were. And so the kids in the mall that this store was located in that worked in the mall would go on break, run in, and grab their drinks. And because they were in a rush and because they were young and they were moving fast, this would turn off the older shoppers, and they would not want to go near the aspirin because then they'd be near the kids. So when they told the store switched where the refrigerators were. The old people could get their aspirins and life was good. The kids got their drinks. And I think this ended up becoming a model for these kind of stores all over the country. But anyway, all of it to me it's fascinating because it's still not quite as in your brain as an app. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why the distinction matters to me, but there's something creepy about when tech is trying to get really into your brain versus what they're allowed to figure out without going inside of you. Mm-hmm. So like these tests are cool, because you get a sense of who you are, but it's also kind of part of that culture that I'm not super interested in.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
This was I don't know if it's our longest episode yet, but it was an extra long.
It depends on how much nonsense I cut out.
Oh, I see.
But this could be our longest.
Yeah, which is fitting for our 10th episode. Very interesting, learning things about ourselves and about each other that we maybe didn't necessarily know, and tapping into the things that we did know, but it's always interesting hearing these things about ourselves. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time. We still have to figure out what we're going to talk about next time, and the time after that, and after that, but
we'll figure it out before we start recording.
That's right.
That's our promise to you.
Thank you for joining us.